Noswaith Dar Pawb. Good evening, everybody. My name is Councillor Hannah Fleet, and I'm the Chair of the Education and Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting? This is a multi-location meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live stream fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available, and for those attending remotely to choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those attending remotely, please use the raise hand function. We will alternate between the chamber and remote attendees. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber are unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their cameras on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, please put a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other, and that applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. When I open the debate to members, I will ask committee members to speak and put their questions first, followed by non-committee members. Whilst I do not wish to stifle debate, can I remind members that any questions should be focused on the subject matter and to avoid repetition. If I feel the length of any individual speech is negatively impacting on the overall time for discussion and becoming unmanageable, I will defer to the committee's rules of procedure, in which case speeches will be limited to 5 minutes. Can I remind members that as there is an exempt item on the agenda today, that you should be... Oh, we haven't. Okay, skip that bit. I'd like to welcome Frank Larder to today's meeting. He is joining us as a representative of Conway's Youth Council, and I'd also like to welcome members of the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee who've been invited to attend for agenda item 9.8, which is the bridging loan request process and delegated authority approval. So moving on to the agenda, could I have apologies for absence, please?
Apologies have been received from councillors Keith Eales, Yvonne Lloyd, Carol Beard, Cheryl Carlisle, and also Ros Harrison, who is a co-opted member.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest?
I've got a personal interest in the college section of the draft report.
Okay, thank you very much. Take note of that. Any other declarations of interest, Gareth?
I'm a school governor at a Welsh medium school. Does that count? No.
I think, as most of us are school governors, we're all going to find that there might be some effect on our schools from this. So thank you. So I'll move on then. Urgent matters. Do we have any urgent matters? No, thank you. And minutes. To approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting on the 19th of September 2023, pages 3 to 6. Do I have a proposer to accept these minutes? Thank you, Councillor Kay. And a seconder? Councillor Frank, thank you. Can I have hands to confirm that we're happy? So everybody, thank you very much. So then we have the minutes of the school budget forum. So we're to receive for information, minutes of the school budget forum held on the 26th of September 2023. Please could I have a proposer to note these minutes? That's Councillor Kay. And I've got Councillor Joe seconding. Thank you. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. And I am not aware of any questions to Cabinet members. So review the forward work programme. I'm going to ask Dawn Hughes to present this. She is the Scrutiny and Committee Services Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. So a couple of changes that I need to advise you of. So the review of the ALM provision has been moved from January to April in light of some recommendations regarding what should be included in the new statutory review. So that has been moved to accommodate that. The update on the Welsh in Education strategic plan has been deferred until March 24. And there's been a request for a report for the 21st of May in relation to the strategic outline plan for the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme. So that's my update, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions regarding any of that? Okay. Can I have a proposer that will accept the changes to the forward work programme? Councillor Grenell, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Austin. Councillor Dav has got his hand up. Oh, it's gone now. Are you just seconding? Thank you very much. So can we take a vote on that, please? Thank you. So moving on then, we have item 8A, and this is to provide members with an update on the home to school transport consultation. I'm going to ask Councillor Julie to introduce the item and then followed by John Davis, our Officer for the Strategic Manager, Property and Site Management, is going to then present the report. Councillor Julie, please.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening to everybody. Okay, so as the Chair has just said, this is to provide members with an update as to where we are and due to what we're all aware, the increasing cost of home to school transport, it was decided at previous here at scrutiny and at Cabinet that we would go out to consult on all the discretionary element of the home to school transport. So before you today is a report looking at that survey, which is due to go live in February. And then it will be when we get the results of that survey that we'll have opportunity to really discuss what the results of the survey are and what we as a local authority and members feel is the most appropriate way forward in terms of that discretionary transport. So I'm going to hand over to John to go through a little bit more detail around that. Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, everyone. As Councillor Julie shares, following Cabinet's approval on the 22nd of August 2023, a consultation is being undertaken on the non-statutory, the discretionary elements of the home to school transport. And I think it's important that we do that. It's nothing to do with the statutory home to school transport. It's just the non-statutory home to school transport that is going out to survey. It's acknowledged that on a national, regional and local level, home to school transport is one of the fastest growing costs in a local authority's annual budget. And engagement's already taken place with Transport Officer Working Group, Home to School Transport Project Team, portfolio holders of Education and ERF, along with reporting back to the Service Development Programme Board with regards to the survey that is part of your agenda packs this evening. We wanted to share that the survey will go live 1st of February 2024. And will remain open for a period of 6 weeks. A copy of the survey has been provided to you. Any recommended changes to the policy following feedback from the consultation will have to be approved by Cabinet by September 24, and for the changes to be implemented from September 25. And I'd just like to thank everybody here today that's been part of the process and helped put this survey together. And I'd also like to have your help in circulating this survey as far as wide as possible so we can have a good turnout and some good feedback so we can make those considerations and recommendations to you as members at the middle of next year. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Julie and John. Do we have any questions that we want to put to officers? Councillor Gareth.
Diolch am adael I fi siarad. Fyswn ni jyst yn licio dweud, dwi'n credu, os fysa ni'n stopio'r trafnidiaeth i'r ysgolion Cymraeg, fysa angen gwario fwy o bres i godi'r safon yn yr ysgolion eraill. A dwi jyst eisiau gwybod, yda ni wedi wneud y costa yna fel bod pobl yn gallu wneud penderfyniad clir arno fo, cos dwi o'r farn, os da ni ddim yn cael y safon iawn yn yr ysgolion eraill, da ni'n mynd i ddiwedd fyny fo lot o ddisgyblion fel fi sy'n gallu siarad rhyw fath o Gymraeg, ond yn cael ffindio'n anodd i sgwennu ac i ddarllen Cymraeg. A dwi'n credu fod hi'n bwysig bod ni'n gallu cynnig addysg Gymraeg drwyadl i'r bobl sy'n eisiau mynd yna. Ac os yda ni, os oes na gos, dyla bod ni'n cymryd hynna fewn i gysidraeth. A rhaid ni fod yn ofalus, os di bobl yn dweud bod nhw ddim eisiau talu am y trafnidiaeth Cymraeg, yda ni'n wir yn mynd i stopio wneud o? Os da ni jyst yn gofyn y cwestiwn a da ddim yn paso na i dim byd hefo fo, be di'r pwynt gofyn y cwestiwn? So fyswn ni'n grybwyll bod ni'n tynnu'r darn yna allan o'r cwestiynau. Diolch.
Okay, do you have an officer? Thank you.
Diolch. Diolch Gareth am y cwestiwn. Na i droi'r Gymraeg hefyd os di hynny'n iawn. Da ni wedi ystyried yr ymgynghoriad ynghyd destun y cysga yn cynllun strategol o fewn addysg ar gyfer datblygu'r Gymraeg. Felly mae hynny'n un o'r argymhellion o ran yn cysga ni, bod ni yn symud ysgolion cynradd ag uwchradd rwan drwy'r categori iaith yn unol â polisi Llywodraeth Cymru. Mae'r cysga ar gael i chi, felly fedrwch chi weld hynny ar gwefan y cyngor. A fedrwn ni yrru copi beth bynnag i chi. Felly, da ni wedi gwneud yn siŵr hefyd bod ni yn ystyried hefyd yr cysga wrth roed yr ymgynghoriad yma at ei gilydd. Ond dwi'n meddwl bod yr adborth yna'n bwysig, a mae o'n bwysig i adrodd o nôl yn yr ymgynghoriad. Dwi'n meddwl bod o'n bwysig cynnwys bob un agwedd yn yr ymgynghoriad yma mwyn i ni gael yr adborth yna ac i ystyried o wedyn fel rhan o argymhellion yr ymgynghoriad. Ond hefyd fydd rhaid wneud equality impact assessment ar unrhyw newidiad da ni yn ei wneud yn sgil yr ymgynghoriad. Felly, pwynt da, ond dwi'n meddwl bod o'n bwysig bod yr adborth yna'n dod drwy'r ymgynghoriad a gewch chi gyfle i wneud hynny unwaith mae o'n fyw.
Thank you. Councillor Gwennell.
Mae o'n bryder mawr genna i, chi'n gwybod, os ydych chi'n mynd i ystyried peidio talu am gludiant ysgolion Cymraeg. Dydy'r ymgynghoriad yma ddim yn sôn am y cysga. Fydd gen y rhan fwyaf o bobl sydd yn ymateb i'r ymgynghoriad ddim gwybodaeth gefndirol. Da ni eisoes wedi clywed gen gynghorwyr sydd yn awgrymu, chi'n meddwl bod ni'n gwella safon y Gymraeg ym mhob ysgol yn y sir. Fedrwch chi ddim monitro hynny. Mae ysgolion penodedig, yr hen benodedig Gymraeg, byddan nhw'n mynd i gategori 3. Yn yr ysgolion yna, mae'r addysg yn gyfan gwbl trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Maen nhw'n wneud i aroliadau trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg, a maen nhw'n cael cymwysterau trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Mae o'n bryder mawr os ydych chi yn mynd i just glastwreiddio'r Gymraeg mewn ffordd. Ar hyn o bryd mae gennych chi 25.8% o blant Conwy yn derbyn i haddysg trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. A'r nod ydi gynyddu hynny o 14% gyda nod uchelgeisiol o gael 40% o ddisgyblion yn cael i'w haddysg trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg yn ôl y cysga. Rwan te, fedrwch chi gael 40% o blant yn cael addysg trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg, ond pa fath o Gymraeg, pa safon o Gymraeg? Chi'n bod, da chi'n gwybod yn yr ysgolion cyfrwng Cymraeg bod nhw yn cael y safon iawn o addysg Gymraeg. Maen nhw'n gallu bod yn rhugl, yn arlafar, yn darllen ac yn ysgrifennu. Mae o'n bryder mawr os ydy bobl jyst yn mynd i edrych ar hwn. Wrth gwrs fydd pobl sydd dim cefndir Gymraeg yn mwy neu lai yn pleidleisio i ddweud na, dydw i ddim yn meddwl ddylen ni dalu am gludiant ysgolion Cymraeg. Felly fyswn i'n neud os o'n i gennau ddim dealltwriaeth, ond dwi'n cefnogi be mae Gareth newydd i ddweud, mae o'n wirioneddol bryderus. Be fydd effaith hyn ar ysgolion, enghraifft Ysgol Dyffryn Conwy ac Ysgol Creuddyn, dydw i ddim yn gwybod.
Thank you. Would you like to respond? Or...
Diolch, Cyngor Gwennell. Yr un ymateb sgynna i deud y gwir, mae bod o'n gyfle i chi i rannu y farn yna fel rhan o'r ymgynghoriad. Ond hefyd rhaid cofio, da ni yn cludo plant i ysgolion Cymraeg tu allan i ffiniau Conwy. Felly wrth gwrs, mae yna ystyried hefyd i hynny o ran yr ymgynghoriad. Ond fel dwi'n dweud, gewch chi gyfle i roed a cynnig yr adborth yna fel rhan o'r ymgynghoriad.
Thank you, diolch. I'm going to go to Councillor Joe, who's online, and then Councillor Austin in the room.
Diolch, Chair. Can I just start by drawing you to page 77, which is paragraph 5. I'm appalled once again at the use of the phrase looked after children, and it repeats it over and over again. Can we just be more careful, please, when these are written, that we get that correct now? And it's children looked after, diolch. But my point was, obviously we know what state we're in, and I just think it's now time that discretionary services are begun to be paid for. Obviously, if children are on free school meals, then they should remain free. But I do think there's room now to start charging. And I don't know what portfolio holder thinks. Obviously, it was tried a few years ago. But I just think the time has now come that there needs to be some charging for those that can afford. Thank you.
Diolch, Jo, and thank you for pointing out the wording in the document, and we will make sure that that's reviewed. Thank you. John, are you able to comment on the charging?
Yeah, we have previously looked at this pre-COVID, looking at charging for elements of the home to school transport. Unfortunately, there is the PSVAR accessibility regulations that there is stopping us from doing that. The new regulations that will come to force for all modes of transport with regards to taking learners from A to B, home to school from their homes to school, in 2026. So we'll be unable to charge for the service unless the contractors have the buses and taxis that are accessible for all. And that won't take place until August 2026. Just to brief you again, we'll be unable to charge, given that the buses and what have you won't have that accessibility as part of their transport.
Diolch. Am I okay to come back, Chair?
Yes, you can, Jo.
It'd be a shame to lose the service for the period between now and the period they can charge, and then bring back a chargeable service. Is there any other way around this at all?
John?
We have looked at it, and we're limited also to the transport contractors in and around the area. So that's a concern, but they will have to do something by 2026. So we'll obviously work with them and have that discussions with them and look at that as a way forward. And yeah, definitely, if that's something that we can revisit, then that's something that we should be doing.
Diolch, thank you. So the next person that I was going to ask to speak was Councillor Austin.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Just eisiau rhoi enghraifft ydw i. Mae gennai berson sydd, mae hi'n ferch, mae mam a'i thad sy wedi gwahanu. Mae mham i'n byw Mochtra, mae thad sy'n byw yn Eglwys Bach yn fy ward i. Pan oedd hi mam a'i thad sy a fo'i gilydd oedd nhw'n byw Mochtra ac oedd y ferch yn mynd i ysgol uwchradd y Creuddyn. Mi oedd hi mham i'n danfon hi i ddal y bws yn Glan Conwy ac o bob peth yn iawn. Anyway, mae'r mam a tad wedi chwalu, mae'r tad rwan yn byw efo'i rieni yn Eglwys Bach, mae'r ferch yn treulio hanner i hamser efo'i mham ac hanner i amser efo'i thad. Blwyddyn dwytha oedd hi'n teimlo na fedra hi ddim mynd i ysgol y Creuddyn ddim mwy oherwydd oedd hi'n cael ei bwlio. Felly mi nathon nhw benderfynu mynd â hi i ysgol Dyffryn Conwy. Ond mi oedd yna broblem. Oedd rhaid iddi dalu i gael byspas. A oedd hi, y peth oedd hi'n dal, pan oedd hi'n byw efo'i mham, oedd hi'n dal yn medru dal y bys o Glan Conwy, ond lle dal bys Creuddyn, oedd hi'n dal bys ysgol Dyffryn Conwy wrth gwrs. Ac wedyn pan oedd hi'n aros efo'i thad, oedd hi thad yn danfon hi Eglwys Bach, cos mae'r bys Glan Conwy yn pico plant Eglwys Bach i fyny i fynd i ysgol Dyffryn Conwy. Felly, mi nath hyn greu lot o broblemau yn y cychwyn. A be raid i ni gofio ydy, mi yda ni yma i wasanaethu ein plant, a mi yda ni yma i wneud yn siŵr bod nhw'n cael y gofal gorau a'r addysg gorau. Dwi'n dallt y sefyllfa ariannol, ond dwi yn teimlo mi fasa'r Adran Addysg wedi bod yn fwy o help i'r rhieni pan yn delio efo'r achos yma. Mae o wedi sortio rwan, yn y diwedd mae'r rhieni wedi cytuno i dalu am byspas iddi fynd i ysgol Dyffryn Conwy. Ond mae o rhywbeth mae rhaid ni fod yn ofalus oherwydd da ni'n delio efo bobl ifanc a bobl ifanc bregus iawn. Felly, na'r unig pwynt o'n i eisiau gwneud. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Austin. I know we're going to all be aware of some very, very significant stories about some of our residents, but we are here just to look at the consultation and to see whether we're happy with this consultation process taking place and going out as it stands with the alterations that Councillor Joe pointed out. I know when we get the consultation results in, that then we'll no doubt have a very long debate, and it's going to be a very challenging debate, but that's not a debate that's going to alter anything now. This is about us getting this consultation out and seeing if we're actually happy with what's in front of us going out to the public and asking them their opinions. And obviously for us to be sharing that to get as much input as possible. Do I have anybody else that wishes to speak? Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Paul. Oh, sorry, Councillor Chris, because he's on this committee, and then I'll go to Councillor Paul.
Take that off. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, as Chair's just said, I mean, this is about the consultation, not actually the ins and outs of what we get back. And we did decide at a previous meeting that nothing would be off the table here. We said we wanted to consult on everything and we would argue the case for the various bits and pieces when it comes in. I'm not sure whether or not, you know, we all want to fight the hardest for our residents, but we're all facing challenging circumstances. I've had to do some very rough maths here, and my maths is very, very rough, so I'm warning you that now. So from my estimations, then the discretionary amount that we're talking about is just short of £4 million. The other, I need my glasses for this bit now. The other discretionary criteria costs about £78,000. The Welsh part is 546,000. Denomination schools is 117,000. Post 16 is 390,000, and transport for pupils with medical and additional learning needs is 1.248 million by my very rough maths. Okay, so don't hold me to that. It depends whether we're trying to get a flavour. If we want proper feedback from the public and for the mood of the public, then I think we need to, you know, we've given scenarios, we've given, you know, quite good scenarios. There's been explanations of what will happen with, what will happen without. I think I'd like to see some figures attached to that. And I would also like to see the percentage of council tax that this also includes, so that we can get a genuine feeling from the public. Over the years, it's now, well, it's evident that there is a feeling there that it's now the council's duty to provide transport to get children to school. In many of our days, it was our parents' duty. In many of our days, we made our own ways to school. We have within here, and I will wrap this up very, very quickly. So the statutory duty and what do local authorities have to provide? At the very end of it, it's promote sustainable modes of travel. We now have the infrastructure for that with the blanket 20-mile-an-hour restrictions, so that we can now look at lifting certain roads out. So the paths of transport to schools should theoretically be safer. So there are things to look at there, and it's also, you know, what else is there? You know, I mean, if we took this away, and I'm not advocating taking this away, I'm just saying that, you know, at the moment, we're doing the path of least resistance and the easiest option, which is throwing money at the issue, which is why this budget has grown so large. If you take that money out of the equation and that service out of the equation, parents will start carpooling. There will be organised things within the neighbourhood, or there could be. Parents could start carpooling. There could be organised things there. You know, we could actually spend the money on the things that are truly needed. But anyway, you know, and I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying these are things that are available there. You know, like I say, I'm just picking up various things. You know, Councillor Austin mentioned a case where, and again, we can argue this when the consultation comes back, that, you know, parents that have divorced, etc., that implies we're making 2 payments. Is that correct? We're making 2 payments for those 2 journeys. So half the time, that child isn't using one of those services. It should be 1 payment. It should be 1 payment split amongst the journeys that they need. I'm not sure why this is an issue, but the percentage that is a tiny, tiny amount. But you know, these are the things that we should be focusing in and what have you. Right, I think I've used my time. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm not sure there was a question in there, so, okay.
There wasn't really a question there. It was more of a
Okay.
comment that this is here to gather all the information, and then we can have the very, very real and important discussions once we have the mood of the public and the other stuff. But I accept that, you know, some of the Gwenol's and Garrett's point that maybe people need to know more about, you know, Curriculum 2050 and the other bits and the promotion of that. However, well, seeing as I put the microphone back on, this is a discretionary fund for a policy that is Welsh Government's, and therefore maybe we should be knocking on Welsh Government's door and saying, well, you know, this is part of your thing, so you need to fund that as well. So there is an avenue there to go down as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to go on to Councillor Paul.
Well, I fully support the consultation and the previous decision the committee made to include everything. Having said that, I think when the consultation goes out, there should be quite a detailed context that is shared with the public. And we've had indications this evening from Gwenol and Chris and Gareth and Austin of some of these issues. And I think that that's important. Obviously, the key context is the Welsh Government's budget announcement this afternoon. We will get our allocation tomorrow, but I'm not looking very hopefully, though they said it's 3.1% as previously agreed. I suspect we will get slightly less than what they suggested. And part of that is obviously because we have less children, in part. The issues that concern me more about the overrunning costs, and I actually commend and celebrate the fact that Conway up until today and going forward until September 25, because any savings we make from this will only be in the context of the budget for 25-26. So we're not going to make any savings in the next financial year, apart from in a couple of maybe areas. So the issue for me is our local school transport market, which we have limited influence over, which is problematic to us. Operationally, there was operational decision, it was in the press, to take some contracts off contractors in the relative past. In my view, there is an issue about procurement and management of contracts and the audit and governance of those. And my understanding is that there will be a report in 2024 dealing with some of these issues. But I think it is important, as Chris said, that we put it in the context of what this will cost to the council taxpayer, because that is an important context. I like I say, with Gwenol's point, it's equally important we put it in the context of our overall policy towards the Welsh language, which I personally am supportive of. If it goes out without that wider context, we're not really giving information that enables people who reply to be best informed. And I think if the consultation is to be robust, they do need to be well informed about all of these issues.
Thank you. Do we think it's an option to be able to put the costings in as has been suggested?
I think all that I think those are good points, and we will be setting the context. You've just got the bare skeleton really of what the consultation will look like. We are intending to set the context around all of the areas that we're consulting on. And I think that probably would be more fruitful than having the actual figures there. The cost in terms of the council tax contribution is going to be part of the local authority budget consultation. And I know that there is some video footage that will accompany that. So we'll have those costs as part of that consultation. But yes, we will definitely contextualise the consultation. And I think just in response to those these savings will only be realised in 25. You know, we are making further service reductions for this coming year now. So this is part of our mid-term reduction schedule. We also have a longer-term reduction schedule. So I think it's good practice that we're sharing those with you now.
My only point for this year, the financial year 24-25, and I see Gareth here tonight, and I know he's onto this, is whether there are any actions, and I think they will be relatively marginal, but any actions we can take for 24-25 to further stiffen, I suppose, the audit and governance of our contract management and procurement. But having said that, I'm just very conscious the market is the market, and we may well be on many occasions, to put it crudely, paying through the nose for some of the transport contracts we've got because there's no competition for them. And that does concern me, because where we've got no control, that's where the budget continues its present trajectory. So I know all officers are onto this, so it's not a criticism in any way, but anything we can do in that context will improve the situation for 24-25 and 25-26, because obviously for 25-26, the savings are only 6 months savings. They're not a full year's savings, whatever savings we manage to get through the policy democratic process.
Thank you, Paul. Does anyone wish to respond, or shall I go on to the next question? Councillor Julie.
Thank you, Chair. As I said to you, Paul, that is an area that we're looking at separately. Obviously, this is around the survey that's going out. But Amanda is planning a meeting in the new year to look at that side of it in terms of the costings with ERF and education, so that we can see if there is any options there to try and reduce that. But it's not something that's unique to Conway. That's the situation across the whole of Wales. There's a task force that's been set up in Welsh Government to look directly at this as well, because it is a massive issue. It is the biggest area, John mentioned it before, of increased costs across all local authorities, or one of the biggest. So yeah, everybody's looking at it, and we will feedback when we have any updates if there's something in terms of progress on that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I had Councillor Chris and then Councillor Gwennell.
Yeah, well, this was kind of Paul that opened up the door to this one, and it's probably not the place, you know, as you've just said. We've got fleets of minibuses. Schools have minibuses. The college has minibuses. They're not used before 9 o'clock. They're not used after 3 o'clock. You know, I would like to see, you know, it would be nice if we could think about ways of utilising that for some of our transport needs, you know, maybe starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, even if we had places that, you know, breakfast clubs and things like that, you know, discretionary. If we are making that effort to bring them in, then maybe there's a cost benefit of actually utilising stuff that we've got within our county that isn't being used to actually do that. So we don't have to rely on taxis and other fleets and other bits and pieces. And like you say, we could cross partner. The college doesn't use any of its minibuses before 9 o'clock. There's quite a few projects working with Llandrillo as well. I'm sure if we approach them, they might be able to, so that's an extra 8, what have you. But I know this isn't the place for that, but it's something that somebody might want to make a note of and throw around somewhere upstairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Gwenol.
Ie, fyswn i'n licio chymod mynd o ma heno heb egluro ynghyd â'n mhryder i am effaith hyn ar addysg Gymraeg, ond fel cynghorydd sydd yn gynghorydd ar ward wledig iawn, a dydw i ddim yr unig gynghorydd sydd yn cynrychioli ward wledig. Chi'n bod, dwi'n yn siŵr iawn ydy pob un cynghorydd yn cor sir yn dallt pa mor bell mae rai o'n plant ni'n byw oddi wrth ei ysgol uwchradd agosaf. Mae yna rai plant yn byw hyd at 20 milltir i ffwrdd o ysgol uwchradd agosaf. Mae yna rai plant yn Uwchaled yn cychwyn i'r ysgol chwarter wedi 7, hefo tacsi i ddal bws wedyn yn y pentref agosaf i wedyn ddod i'r dref agosaf. Chi'n bod, dydy carpooling ddim yn opsiwn i bobl cefn gwlad, mae'r rhieni nhw angen mynd i weithio. Fedra nhw ystyried danfon i plant i ysgol. Mae'r rhaid i hwn gael ei edrych arno fo ynghyd destun gwledig a trefol ar y wahân yn y marn ni. Oherwydd, os ydych chi'n mynd i wneud i bobl dawlu i fynd i'r ysgol uwchradd, dyn ni'n mynd i lawr yr rwt elitaidd wedyn, dim ond yr rhieni sydd yn medru fforddio fydd yn cael addysg bellach i'w plant. Oherwydd bydd y plant llai, yn dod o gefndiroedd llai y cyfoethog, bydd yr rhieni falle'n penderfynu nad ydych chi ddim yn mynd ymlaen i neu lefel A. Rhaid i chi dilyn trywydd arall. Dwi'n meddwl bod o'n drywydd peryglus iawn ar ran yr iaith Gymraeg a pobl sy'n byw yng nghefn gwlad. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Gwenol. Councillor Julie.
Yeah, so this is for discretionary transport that we're consulting on. Those who have entitlement to transport will still receive that. That won't change. So the majority of people who are attending rural schools will be over the threshold. So they will be 3 miles from their nearest primary. So they'll continue to receive their transport. They'll be not 3 miles, sorry, 2 miles from primary, 3 miles from secondary. So it won't have a massive impact. In fact, on those areas, it's those who are perhaps choosing Cymraeg over Saesneg. So therefore, they are currently going past perhaps an English school to then go to a Welsh school. That's where the Welsh language will be impacted. But like I say, we will have opportunity, and I promise you that the consultation will be listened to, and that's what we want. What I would say is I would encourage everybody to, as a governor, which the majority of us are, get your governing bodies to respond to the consultation, and get your residents, get anybody who you feel, well, anybody, because, you could be a grandparent, parent, auntie, uncle, whatever it may be, this is opportunity to consult on it. And the more people that respond, the easier it makes our job in terms of looking at that information. But we will have a thorough discussion. And I think the only reason that the Welsh language was kept in there was because I think that will offer it more protection. I know that's what the person who proposed it, one of the reasons they put it forward, because we will have that information that then will be put forward by families, by schools, by governing bodies, by everybody, so that we can protect the areas that we want to protect and ensure that it continues. But in terms of those who are attending schools that are 7 miles away from where they live, that will continue. That won't change, because you have transport to your nearest school if it's over 2 miles for primary, 3 miles for secondary. So just wanted to clarify that we're not stopping all transport at all.
Can I just ask, is that going to be post 16?
Again, yeah, post 16 is part of the non-statutory element of the homeschool transport. So that is being consulted on, and that'll be that is part of the survey.
Which is probably what I didn't explain, post 16, courses, if that's going to become discretionary and possibly stopped, then children who want to carry on with their education to A level in their nearest Welsh medium school or any Welsh medium school, you know, they won't be able to afford it.
But again, I think we're preempting what the survey feedback's going to say here. You know, all we're asking is providing you with the feedback of the survey so far, and this is a conversation once we've had the information from the members of the public.
I have the feeling that you want to protect Welsh medium education. Am I right in thinking that?
I think we all do, don't we? Here,
Why consult then?
well, it was a cabinet's decision as part of the meeting in August that we go out to consult on all non-statutory criteria on home to school transport, and that was a decision that we as officers have taken on board, and that we've put the survey in place. So that is what we are going to go to consult on.
So I'm going to ask Lowry to comment on this.
Diolch Cynghorydd Gwennol, and you know, Cynghorydd Gwennol, you know that the Welsh language is an absolute priority for us as a service and as a team, and you'll recall that the discussions that we've had around our Estyn inspection and the WESP on that. But I think we do need to be very careful, because how do we determine which of these areas should and shouldn't be consulted on? You know, how much, I suppose, value do we pay on faith, ALN, and other denominations? How can we agree here that we shouldn't be consulting on the Welsh? What's the difference between us consulting on that to any other area? And I think the strength in having a consultation looking at all of these areas is that you'll have that opportunity to feed back. And I think that feedback is valuable. We'll set the context. We will include links to the WESP, the CSGA, as part of the consultation, so that the public, when they are completing it, have that knowledge at hand to inform their response in the consultation. But I'm not sure how we could discriminate against one area during this consultation.
And that is a decision that we did make here as well, and we did recommend that to Cabinet, that we should be looking at everything that wasn't statutory, and that was how we decided, because initially there were bits that had been kept out, and we felt that it was a more valuable consultation if it looked at everything that was non-statutory. Thank you. Councillor Julie and then Councillor Paul.
Yeah, just one final little point, just adding on to what Lodi said there. You know, we pride ourselves on our transparency here in Conway. And I think to start picking and choosing and excluding certain parts, I think would be argued that that wasn't open and transparent. You know, and I am incredibly proud of the Welsh language and the opportunities that we provide in terms of education. And I only want to see that improved. And I honestly believe the best way to do that is to have an open and frank, honest conversation, because I think that the absolute majority will support continuing to provide opportunity for any young person who wants to have their education through Cymraeg to have that opportunity. You know, that is not going to change, but by excluding things and not being open and transparent, I think that creates more of an issue than actually having the opportunity for everybody to talk about why Welsh is important to them and why they want to protect the opportunity for every young person to have that right. So thanks, but we are digressing into.
But it's the same on the other areas as well. It's really important that we have that debate about faith, that we had the debate about ALN, that we discuss the issues where children have two homes. You know, all those things are coming up in this document, and it all need our consideration from our residents. Councillor Paul, I said you could speak as well.
Just a small point. Support what Julie says there, because we should actually be celebratory, I think, almost today, that our present generous non-statutory discretionary policy is going to continue until September 25. And historically, and I support and commend this as well, we've given significant autonomy to our officers to have discretion when they're making these decisions in respect of whether it's children ALN or other significant family circumstances, or one that I'm particularly pleased to see, Gypsy and Travellers, what we do there. And likewise, it's very important for a significant part of our population that they're able to attend a faith school. So in a sense, we're only in this context today because of the financial situation. I suspect we wouldn't even be debating this or going out to consultation if it wasn't for the financial situation. So we need to keep that in our minds, and also applaud ourselves for maintaining such a generous non-discretionary, a discretionary, non-statutory provision, because many local authorities will not have gone as far as we do in Conway up to this point, and we're going to continue this present generous service up until September 25, which we will be criticised by some people because of the financial context in which we face.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, Paul. I'm going to go to Councillor Frank and then Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to thank John and the officers for this report. I've learned a lot from reading this report. And when it comes to separation, I'm sure one parent's got parental responsibility, and I would take the parental responsibility to pay for the transport. I would like to move the recommendations, Chair. I've enjoyed the preliminaries, and you can see the interested parties coming forth. The passion for the Welsh language, rightly so. The passion for the ALN will be rightly heard. Faith, every section of the community will have spokespeople, and it's up to the people, the councillors, to bring these different avenues to the fore so that we adopt the right policy that fits the financial situation that we find ourselves in, unfortunately. I would like to move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Frank. I did say that Councillor Kay could speak, though, so I will allow her that opportunity to speak before we go for a seconder.
That's okay. I was going to propose the recommendation, so I'll
Would you like
second
to second?
Councillor Frank.
Okay.
I think it's vital that the public have an opportunity to have a say on this. I think the majority of people that are going to respond to this are going to be people that are affected in one way or another, be that, school staff, pupils, older pupils, or their families, those in the Welsh communities, those with ALN. So I think we're going to get a really good response to this, and I think we need to take that on board. So I think with the suggestions that were made, with some of the figures being put in and links, I'm more than happy to second that.
Okay, so we've got the proposal and the second to accept. And it was with the provision that we would have the corrections that Councillor Joe pointed out about the terminology, and make sure that the context is set as was discussed previously. Okay, Councillor Dav, have you got a question, or are you?
Sorry, I was going to second the Frank as well. All the decisions have been made here. We've come to a point where everything has been included. It's a really good report, and I was just going to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got the support we need at the moment. So I'll take this to a vote, and we're voting on the recommendation that is that the Education and Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee acknowledges the update report on home to school transport, and that scrutiny accepts that the survey on home to school transport goes live with the additions that we've already mentioned in February 2024. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, would you like me to, I've got not everyone for, so do you want me to go to account? Is there anyone against, please? And do I have abstentions? Okay, thank you, that's carried. So we're going to move on then. Item 9A is the bridging loan request process for delegated authority approval. I'm going to ask Councillor Julie Fallon to introduce the item, and Gareth Evans, who's the head of finance, will present the report. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. So today, following stakeholder feedback and many discussions over recent months and probably years really, I'm happy to support what's before you, this streamlined bridging loan process for schools in the report today. It will allow schools in exceptional, and I highlight the term exceptional circumstances, to apply for a loan with a financial recovery plan in place. And you'll see from the report that we're looking at delegation below 100,000 and a joint F&R and education scrutiny, much like today, for those over. But I will hand over to Gareth to give you the detail. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gareth.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Julian, and it's good evening now, isn't it, members? Yeah, Councillor Julie covered some of what I was going to say there, so I'll try not to repeat really. But obviously, you've got the report and the detail there. There was quite extensive discussion and feedback from the school budget forum throughout the budget setting process for the current financial year around the process that was in place and some of the, I guess, complexities and bureaucracy around that process and the some of the hoops maybe that schools were required to jump through in order to access any support that was required through a bridging loan. So we reviewed the process and it was felt that there was scope to streamline, as set out in the report, but this, I think importantly, it needed to be balanced with also ensuring that there was appropriate oversight and proportionate scrutiny as well. So there was deliberation also around which committee should receive the report. So just to point out in paragraph 2.1, that should also state the Education and Skills Overview Scrutiny Committee as well as FROSC, so apologies for that. In terms of the key considerations and changes, and Julie did touch on some of that, the proposals are that the decision making on loan applications up to £100,000 are delegated to the Strategic Director of Finance and Resources as Section 151 officer and the Strategic Director of Social Care and Education in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance Strategy and the Cabinet Member for Education and Skills. And that any loan applications over £100,000 be considered in detail by a panel who will make a recommendation to Cabinet or Council in accordance with the approval limit set out in the Council's constitution. I think the key point as well is that all loan applications will need to be supported by a realistic, robust and achievable recovery plan. And that process is set out in the flowchart on page 90 of the pack. The other main change is the proposal that schools will be charged interest on any loan effective from this financial year, with the mechanism for doing so to be determined by the school budget forum. And the rationale, just briefly, for charging interest is that that process is an existing process already set out in the council's scheme for financing schools in paragraph 4.6, which is in the pack. Approved loans to schools is obviously money that the council is unable to otherwise invest and therefore equates to lost investment interest. I think when interest rates were at their historic lows for well over a decade, it wasn't really a factor, but obviously now that rates are at their highest point in over 14 years, it is more of a factor. And then my final point, and possibly the key point with regards to interest, is set out in paragraph 3.7 of the report, which confirms that under existing arrangements, the schools are currently paid any interest earned on their balances. For 2022-23, that amounted to £155,000, and we're anticipating that could be as high as £300,000 for the current year. Thank you.
Diolch, Gareth. Do I have any questions for Gareth, please? Okay, Councillor Gareth.
Thank you once again. Yeah, my main concern with this is that we don't send out the wrong message, that it's an easier option now to go for a loan, that it isn't the message that, governors and schools don't have to make the really hard decisions early, because I would guess that is what we want them to do, is actually try and balance their budgets. That they should be, if you're looking at a big saving, your biggest cost to staff. So, have they started that redundancy process sooner rather than later? and those consultations, and they don't look at this of, oh crikey, maybe we can sit on our hands for a little while and it's easier to get the loans now. And it's just about the messaging. And, you know, on that, do we know how many schools have started the consultations on the staffing side of things? And if they haven't, are we certain that they are balancing their budgets and that they've actually got plans in place? Because loans aren't always the answer, because it's a sticking plaster, but as you quite rightly say, they need a firm recovery plan. And they're going to have to pay those loans back. So it actually takes money out of the budgets for future years, and especially if they're paying interest on it. And I'd just like to finish off, yeah, the interest should be attributable to the individual school rather than shared out amongst all the schools. But, you know, it's just that messaging and making sure that we're on top of the fact that schools should be looking to deliver a balanced budget this year.
I'm fairly sure that is always the priority of the schools as far as their financial management is concerned, but I'm going to hand you over to Lowry for a full explanation.
Yeah, diolch Cynghorydd Gareth. Just to provide some reassurances really. Schools are looking at their pupil-teacher ratios, they're looking at their class sizes, they're looking at their staffing structures, non-teaching staff and teachers, and they're working diligently to do that. You know, they really are. We've got education finance team, which David leads, having regular meetings with all schools now with our education improvement service link officer. And those schools that are identifying staffing reductions, then we've provided training to the governors of the schools and also to the head teachers in terms of moving through that redundancy process now. Information has gone out on redundancies, and we've got HR at hand as well to support with that process. You know, I think in all the time that I've been working with schools, this loan is a last resort for them. It's quite a fearful process that they don't want to enter into. And I know in discussions with heads that they really truly believe that. So last year, we were looking at approximately about 10 schools requiring a loan, but it actually transpired that we only had one. So other schools had mitigated against that in terms of changing to staffing, changing to the structure of the schools. So that they are absolutely they recognise that this should be a last resort. But I think the purpose and the intention really of streamlining the process is, you know, bringing that request for those low threshold loans, we're looking at under 100,000 to a public forum where parents can view that as well. I think there is a worry of the perception of the school that there's a mismanagement of the finances. And I think, you know, we owe that to the school community. We need to protect them in terms of that. It's our job to make sure that when they're facing financial challenges, that they feel truly supported. And I'm not sure that having that public scrutiny is a helpful stage in the process. So really that's the intention in terms of changing the delegated authority around having this loan process.
Yeah, thank you. That's reassuring, you know, because what I didn't want the governors, because it's an awful process to go through when you're reducing staff, and human nature is thinking, oh, maybe we can put it off for a year or whatever and see what happens. But, you know, it doesn't look as if there's going to be a white charger coming over the hill. So in a way, we're being cruel to be kind by pushing governing bodies to actually make the hard decisions sooner rather than later. So thank you for that reassurance.
And we as central teams, you know, that's how we're supporting schools now. And you look at some of our really inexperienced new head teachers last year. They made some of the greatest redundancies within their individual schools. You know, new head teachers only been post less than a year. So yeah, it's a difficult process, but I think they're leaders. You know, that's part of their role in terms of leading these schools and, you know, using the resources as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Joe.
Diolch. We were told at the beginning of this report by Councillor Julie that obviously schools are struggling, and this is only for schools in exceptional circumstances. We've just heard from Dr. Lowry this will be a last resort, and our schools need to feel truly supported. And on all of those comments, one thing that will truly help them is to take interest off these repayments, and I strongly feel they shouldn't be paying interest on these payments. Thank you.
Okay, I'm
Can
going to
we-
ask Larry to
Yeah,
come in
quickly.
because when a school has money with us, we give them interest as well. So it's a bit of a difficult conundrum. So I'm going to pass this on to someone who can explain it better than me.
I can't explain it any better than Gareth and David can, and I'm not going to try, but I'm just going to try and reassure you, Councillor Joe. We have discussed this with our school budget forum, and our school budget forum has representations from secondary, primary, special, governors, and all the range of schools are represented on it. And I think, you know, considering the financial climate that we're in, considering the interest also that schools do get, as Hannah's alluded to here, they were in agreement that this was the correct proposal. And I think also we need to be mindful as part of our financial regulations, schools should always have been paying the interest, but as Gareth said, because interest rates have been so low for a number of years, we didn't expect that. So really, we're not changing any of our regulations. We're doing what we should have always done in terms of this interest. I don't know whether Gareth and David want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I guess the only thing to add, and Councillor Gareth alluded to it earlier in terms of the interest is the mechanism really around how that works. Whether it is, I guess, and it might be argued it would act as maybe a deterrent if it was applied to the individual school, or does it come from the collective school balances and reduces effectively the interest as things currently stand that they receive. But I think what we're proposing is that will be a decision that the school budget forum ultimately will make the call on what's appropriate.
Is that clear, Councillor Joe?
Yep, diolch.
Diolch. So, Councillor Paul.
Yeah. I'm here in part because of being a member of FROSC, and I think the issue, I support the report that's come forward and the proposals. The one thing I do really want to clarify is the issue really of accountability. Now, obviously, for amounts over 100,000, that will come through the democratic process and will be in the public domain, which is how it should be, I think. I'm fully accepting of the arguments for under 100,000 that we shouldn't have the head teacher and chair of governors here, you know, giving them a grilling, because I don't think that's helpful at all. But what I do think is important is, as a parent, when you're making your preference for a school, whether it's a primary school or a secondary school, you tend to go and look, and you talk to your friends and everything, but you tend to look at the most recent Estin report on that school. You may well look at what's the surplus capacity in that school, because if obviously it's got surplus capacity, parental preference, people in that catchment area maybe are choosing to go elsewhere. But also you want to know the financial robustness of a school. So I'm not in disagreement about the delegation issue, but that information about which schools are in a loan situation must be available to parents, in my view, because if it's not available, they're making preferential treatments based on incomplete knowledge. And the most important thing for a parent is to make what they judge the best decision for their child. And they will not feel pleased if subsequently information comes to light which they should have been available to them. There's no reason not to have that in the public domain, in my view. And I would like to suggest that is ensured when this comes back through the processes as it operates this year.
So as a parent, I can just come in, not as chair here, as a parent, That would not be a priority of mine. My priority would be the happiness of the children, the staff, and what was being provided. I may well have a school who have staff who are nearing retirement, and they're going to cost significantly more than a new member of staff. And it might be that within a year's time, staff turnover results that the finances of the school are not necessarily needing a loan. I would hate to think that my child might have lost an opportunity for an excellent education at a nearby school that required I could walk them there, because I was scared because some rumour was out that they were short of money. No, but we have to be very, very careful, Paul, about the information we put out to the public because it's sometimes misinterpreted. So this school needing a loan may well not be in any sort of financial difficulty. They just literally have got to get from this year to the next year, and then everything's likely to be hunky-dory again. So I would not want parents in an area to be getting a snippet of information such as they're needing a loan, and that being built up to being there's a financial crisis at that school, when that is not the situation, because our finance officers wouldn't have allowed it to get to financial crisis situation. I would like to think that our finance officers, and I'm quite confident that they are, would have been supporting, and that there will be a reason. But that explanation won't go out to the public in the same way. It won't go out as that little red flag that's saying, oh, school in financial crisis. It won't then have the nice, 3-page documents of explanation that would have made you think, oh yeah, it's nothing to worry about because they're going to be fine by next year. I understand why they've made that move. And I think that's why we're looking at protecting our schools from that scaremongering. We know in this area the bad effect of an incorrect ESTIN inspection, because we've had that happen to a school, and that school lost staff as a result because pupil numbers dropped. Pupil numbers are back up, but in the meantime, staff lost jobs and kids ended up not going to their best and nearest school. So I think it's to protect our schools and to protect our children. And I think parents, I wouldn't want them misinterpreting some information about finance. I would like them to prioritise where their child's going to be happy and where they feel that best education will be. I'll now pass to the officers for a slightly less emotional explanation.
Robust challenge, Councillor Paul, in terms of the accountability will take place beforehand. So we'll have discussions at an officer level with the head teacher and the business manager. Then that would come to senior officers within the education service and then strategic directors. So in terms of that accountability, there are various tiers there that will be challenging the recovery plan, challenging what they've done in so far in terms of why do they feel that they're arriving at this point where a loan is necessary. So that in terms of accountability, that will have taken place before that recommendation.
Yes, you may.
So we've had discussion for years. We're one of the only local authorities in Wales that don't allow licence deficits. And we didn't want to go down that route where licence deficits were just something that all schools had the opportunity to use. We wanted to find a way that was appropriate moving forward, that meant that if we have a number of schools, that we're not bringing them all through scrutiny, because it doesn't make sense. Because often, as you kind of touched on, Chair, this isn't some major issue, financial issue in a school. It's often that the planning, so it may be that they perhaps are planning that they will reduce staff through redundancies or just through non-replacement of staff. And that takes a little while for that to come through in their budget. So this is literally what it's called. It's a bridging loan, so that they don't find themselves in a position where they can't balance their budget. And they're struggling to find a way of doing that, because obviously they have to balance their budget. So that there was lots of discussion around this. And that's where we came up with the figure of 100,000 or less. As has already been said, you will have scrutiny. David and his team, and Gareth, but certainly David and his team, work incredibly closely with schools. they offer great support so that schools can do everything possible before they get to this point, to look at every line of their budget and any opportunity that's there. And this is purely about planning their recovery, so that they have that bridging loan for under that. Obviously, for figures over that, we will all have the opportunity then to scrutinise that and determine whether it's appropriate to move forward with the requests that are put in. But, you know, we didn't just pluck a figure out of the sky, and we didn't come up with this solution on our own. This was having looked at the way that other local authorities do things, and through the school budget forum, looking at the best way forward. So I think this is a fair, appropriate way of doing things. And I agree, it shouldn't be that schools don't use this opportunity for fear of everything being put out there, when actually they may have managed their budget very well, but they might have seen an increase in pupils, but it takes a little while to catch up with the finances when you have an increase of pupils. It could be that, it could be a decrease in pupils, but they can see from the projections that in 2 years' time, those numbers are going to go up. There has to be some way of them being able to bridge that gap. And that's what this is. And that's why you have that there. And certainly, as Laurie said, in terms of accountability, you've got the cabinet member for education, the cabinet member for finance, the strategic director for finance, strategic director for social care and education, and everyone else that's involved in that. So I think accountability, I would say there's plenty of accountability there. So yeah, that's why I said today I'm happy to support this, because it's been stakeholder feedback that's been ongoing for some time. So thanks, Chair.
So on that,
Sorry, Paul.
are we saying that the schools that come and get a bridging loan under 100,000, that will be confidential information? Because that feels very uncomfortable to me.
That's not what I'm saying, Paul. What I'm saying is they don't have to come and share all that information in
No,
the
I
public
agree with
domain.
that. That's why it's delegated. Okay, I don't
The
have a
whole
problem.
point is that we will have the opportunity to look at that. David and the team, there will be a number of layers, as I've just said, of support. So I'm not quite sure what you mean. In terms of their finances, when they close their books, then it's not going to be a line that says confidential. That will still form, I mean, I don't know if you can explain perhaps a little better, or perhaps David can, in terms of what it will show us on their books. But we're not for 1 minute trying to hide anything, Paul. We're just trying to find a fair process.
Because I'm not sure that we've answered your question. I think your question here is around the accountability in terms of parents knowing as well. So that will be through the governor meetings. So there will be financial reporting from the head teacher to the governing body. There'll be a parent representation on that governing body, a parent governor, and that's how that information will cascade. That will be transparent. It will be part of the school's reporting.
Let's be absolutely clear on that. So the parent governor who's involved in that process will be able to inform parents, if asked, or some are more active than others, that we are in a bridging loan situation at the time being, and they will be able to share that information quite openly. And on our own public documentation that we have as a local authority, there will be a list or whatever of, as we now, people know now which schools we are presently making loans to, if they want that information.
And the parent governor will have also information on the repayments, the term of the loan as well, as already happens with schools that are in receipt
So
of the
that's
loan.
reassuring. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, are we happy with that point? We all agree. Okay, Councillor Gareth then has been waiting.
Yeah, I just think we need to be really careful with the language we use as far as these loans are concerned. We tend to focus, and I'm equally guilty of focus, they're distress loans, loans of last resort, really difficult loans, like a black mark on the school that they come asking for a loan. But as we've discussed, there could be really positive reasons that they need a loan. You know, if pupil numbers are going up, then it's madness to actually look at reducing staff if you know that your budget and your numbers are going up and you've got the staff you want And, you know, to lose a member of staff and then have to recruit a member of staff because your budget sorts itself out. And that's where really we have to rely on the professionalism of the education and finance team, that the reasons the schools are approaching us are the right reasons and they've got robust plans in place. But I don't think the schools should be made afraid, or the governing body should be made afraid to actually come to us with a good business case to actually ask for a loan.
I think merely what we don't want, we don't need them having to sit here, to make their case here, and which is a very public forum. And it doesn't seem fair when we already will have the assurance of officers that they've gone through this and that every other avenue's been looked at, explored, and it's a bridging loan. And therefore the implication is that this is to get you through a hard year or so, and it will probably be to do with staffing and pupil numbers. It's nearly always going to be that scenario, isn't it? So, and we wouldn't, exactly, you know, you'd be foolish to get rid of an experienced member of staff when you know you're going to need them in another year's time. So I think we're all understanding now. Okay, I'm going to take Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on slightly towards the interest element of the of this report here. I understand the sentiment that Councillor Joe is coming forwards with, we shouldn't charge interest, but this is also lost revenue that would be invested. So I think we have a duty to actually charge interest, because otherwise this becomes, I mean, a well scrutinised overdraft facility, but it is effectively an overdraft facility if we don't charge the interest. I also think it's unfair on other schools that should be shared across the whole board or the whole pot. You know, it should be specific to the school that is doing that, which, you know, they're not necessarily wanting to do that. But again, we are there is a lot of looking at this through the worst possible lens, when in actual fact this could be, you know, a loan to invest and develop and improve, just by moving around these budgets and going forwards, and there will be the scrutiny for that. So it'd be my proposal that we do charge interest on it and not waive interest, and that it would be specific to the school taking out that loan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. So do we have any further questions? Okay, so I have a long list of recommendations here. So for scrutiny to consider, we have considered that we look at the scrutinise this report and we make appropriate recommendations to Cabinet. We've done that. That subject to Cabinet approval of the revised process, Education and Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee set up a joint schools loan application panel with Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee to consider the loan request if there's 100,000 and over, to make recommendations. We've not actually mentioned that in our discussion, but that would be if it were to be over the level that we've talked about. We have here recommendations to send to Cabinet that we would approve the revising school bridging loan request process as outlined in the appended flowchart, to approve the delegated arrangements that have been set out in report, to approve that a joint Finance and Resources Overview Scrutiny Committee, Education and Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee, loan application panel, they consider the detailed loan request for over £100,000 and over, which I've already mentioned there, but also then to approve that schools will be charged interest on the bridging loans in line with the scheme for financing schools maintained by Conway Education Service with effect in the current financial year, and that schools budget forum determine how that interest payable is applied. Bit of a long mouthful. Do I have a proposer to go with all those recommendations together? Councillor Granell, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kay, Councillor Ann, sorry, I did see your hand there as well. Can we go to the vote then? All those in favour? And anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's carried. So, happy Christmas, Madonna Clowin. We have now finished our meeting. Thank you very much for those that have attended both here and remotely. Thank you to our Youth Council for attending and to all the officers and the time they put into this.